Welcome to Computer Aided Design for Quilters, Absolute Beginners. This is just a short answer to one question, so it's a little rushed, but today on Quilters Creative Touch Facebook page, Rena asked, are there any recommendations on how to quilt continuous rows of straight lines by programming it to run on its own like a pantograph? So I'm going to demonstrate first how we're going to make the line that we need here in Pro using patternCAD, and then I will show you how I would line that up in my pantograph if I just had beginners and had that pantograph sent to me. And I will post the pantograph pattern of just a straight line here on the Facebook page, the Quilters Creative Touch Facebook page. So first I just want to get into patternCAD, and all we need to do is draw a straight line. So all we need to do is make a pantograph that's a straight line, which is pretty simple. Here in patternCAD, we go over to Draw and Line, and then get rid of node spacing. If we drew a line with node spacing, it wouldn't be necessarily a straight line. Each of the segments are straight, but the line is hard. So we want to get rid of that, and we'll turn off node spacing, and now we can draw straight lines, which works out pretty nice. But these lines, although straight, are not perfectly straight because they're drawn by human hands. We want a little help from the computer. So we're going to go over here to the left where it says Snap to Grid, and we're going to click on that. That means that when I start to draw a line now, it's going to choose, the computer is going to align it perfectly with the grid squares so that I don't have to worry that I'm building in some error in my quilt. So if we look at Optimize, this is a pretty simple thing. It's going to do a line. Doesn't really matter how long we make this line, because once we save it, it's going to go, we're going to put it in our pantograph, and we can put as many copies as we need and make it whatever size we need. So all that simple straight line begins here, ends there, no big deal. Okay, and then I'm going to save this. If I can remember how to save it. There we go, save. And I'm going to leave it in continuous line because that's all it'll be, and call it single line, and save. So now that is my single line, and it's saved, and all I have to do is get out of here. I don't wish to save my pattern. So once we have this straight line pantograph in our possession, all we have to do is set things up so that we can quilt. So since we want to make a quilt, we're going to use this button here for quilt. My computer is set up. I don't have an actual quilt here yet. I need to make one. So we're going to do open, and it gets a little mad at me. But I know, yes, cancel. I knew there was a button there that worked. Now, I need to decide how many rows of quilting I want to do at a time. You could do just one, but I think it's easier to kind of do multiple rows. So we're just going to stick with these 5 rows that are originally here, and we're going to select our pattern, which is that single line that we've talked about, that we just made, and open that. So now it's waiting there to be moved over here. Then I want to select all of these blocks, and let's see, that should do it. And we're going to place that pattern in all of those blocks. Now, if you can see, these patterns do not actually meet here. So there's a line here that's a quilting pattern, but it breaks at each block, and we don't want it to do that. So we are going to come over here to some of our tools. These aren't the tools that I actually want right now. So we're going to go to Layout. Those are the layout tools. We're going to go to Tools, and we want to connect things by ends. When I click that by ends, everything that's been highlighted, which is the whole thing, connects right in there. So those are continuous lines now. Now, this is probably not what you were thinking when you said you wanted to quilt lines. This looks like one line through each block of the quilt. But I want you to imagine here that this is actually a quilt block instead of an entire quilt. So right now we have 5 lines that could go through your quilt block. If it was a 5-inch block, then we'd have 5 lines about an inch apart quilted through your block. We need to decide how big we want it to be, and we can use this button over here, Size. So it asks if I want to save the design. I might as well. We'll call it Straight Lines because I like to be straightforward. Straight Lines. Oh, that's not how you spell straight, but that's okay. And save. All right, so now we're going to decide how big this quilt needs to be. So right now the quilt height is set at 40 inches and the blocks are set at 8 inches, which means that each of these lines are going to be 8 inches apart as you're quilting. That might be what you're looking for. Maybe you're trying for a stitch in the ditch kind of thing, and 8 inches would be okay. But when someone asked me if they could quilt these straight lines, I was thinking they probably wanted them more like 2 inches apart. So I'm going to set my height at 2 inches and hit OK. And so now you can see that the whole quilt has changed shape for us. These are 2-inch lines that are going to go the 40-inch width of the quilt, which we could change if we wanted to, right? We could make it an 80-inch quilt. Or we could make it 120 or whatever we want. And what we have here, though, even though it looks like a lot more lines, this is going to quilt 5 lines, and each of them are going to be, sorry about that, each of them are going to be 2 inches apart. The first one will start 1 inch down, then there'll be a 2-inch gap, and then there'll be the next line, a 2-inch gap, the next line, and like that. So you can just set this any way you want it. Okay, but we're not done yet. Let's say this is okay. So now I have an 80 inches from end to end, and I have 2 inches between each of my 5 lines. So I hit the quilt button. I don't know if some of the newer versions lead you directly to optimize, but my older program does not. So what it does bring us to is this chart. Because I'm out of safe area, because I made an 80-inch quilt in a 40-inch space, it's all in red and it says out of safe area. But we can ignore that because we're not actually going to quilt this right now. We hit optimize, and now we can see exactly what the quilt, or how the quilt is going to be run. It starts here at this green dot, goes over here to this red dot, then it breaks the thread. It comes over here to this green dot and goes to this red dot, then it breaks the thread, comes over here, goes back. We probably don't need it to do that. I mean, we're just drawing straight lines, so we can probably go from here to here, down, from here to here, here to here, and make this all one continuous line. So these green dots indicate the beginning of the line. The red dots indicate the end of the line. If we click on a dot, we change whether it's the beginning or the end. So now this dot here is the beginning of this line. So line 1 quilts this way. It goes down, and line 2 quilts this way. We come down, line 3 quilts this way. We need to change this one to a beginning dot. Now it's a beginning dot. Now the whole thing quilts from one side to the other and back and over It's still got breaks in it though. These breaks between this end and this beginning, you might want to leave those there. These are only 1 inch long, so it probably doesn't matter one way or another. But in order to remove them, you can just hit remove all, or you can eliminate each one. So I'm going to show you first, just eliminating this one here on the right hand side. Just by clicking on it, it goes away. But if I click remove all, it gets rid of all of them. We do not wish to connect the first and last points. I've done that before. It's wrong. And just by removing all of those blue breaks connects the whole thing. And you can see that when we animate the stitching, it just sews from one end to the other straight like that. These will be as far apart as you set it in your other settings. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. If you appreciated this, please like the YouTube video. That lets me know that I should write more. And comment if you have any ideas on how this could be done differently. Thanks for watching.